Hello and good day. Welcome to our video channel, God's Promises. And today's video will be Genesis 18. Let's get started now. Genesis 18 is a fascinating chapter in the book of Genesis that recounts an important encounter between Abraham and God. This chapter provides us with important insights into the nature of God and the ways in which He interacts with humanity. In this essay, I will explore the healing scriptures and the complete story of Genesis 18 verse by verse, analyzing the meaning and symbolism of each section. Verse 1. And the Lord appeared unto him in the plains of Mamre, and he sat in the tent door in the heat of the day. This verse sets the scene for the chapter, describing how God appears to Abraham in the heat of the day. It is worth noting that the Hebrew word used here for appeared is nera, which can also be translated as was seen. This suggests that the appearance of God was not just a mystical experience but was visible and tangible. Verse 2. And he lifted up his eyes and looked, and lo, 3 men stood by him. And when he saw them, he ran to meet them from the tent door, and bowed himself toward the ground. Abraham is quick to recognize the significance of the visitors and runs to greet them. He is not aware initially that one of the visitors is God himself. Abraham's response of bowing himself toward the ground shows his reverence and respect for the divine. Verse 3. And said, My Lord, if now I have found favor in thy sight, pass not away, I pray thee, from thy servant. Abraham is eager to host the visitors and offers them hospitality. This is a reflection of the cultural norms of the time, where hospitality was considered a sacred duty. Abraham's humility and respect are evident in his address to the visitors as, My Lord. Verse 4. Let a little water, I pray you, be fetched, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. Abraham offers the visitors rest and refreshment, inviting them to wash their feet and rest in the shade of the tree. This is a demonstration of the cultural value of hospitality, and also an expression of Abraham's kindness and generosity. Verse 5. And I will fetch a morsel of bread, and comfort ye your hearts. After that ye shall pass on, for therefore are ye come to your servant. And they said, So do, as thou hast said. The visitors accept Abraham's offer of hospitality, and he goes on to provide them with food and drink. The Hebrew word used here for comfort is sama, which means to support or strengthen. This implies that the food and drink provided by Abraham was not just for sustenance but also to strengthen the visitors in some way. Verse 6. And Abraham hastened into the tent unto Sarah, and said, Make ready quickly 3 measures of fine meal, knead it, and make cakes upon the hearth. Abraham goes to his wife Sarah and instructs her to prepare a meal for their guests. This verse provides us with a glimpse of the division of labor between men and women in ancient times. It is also worth noting that 3 measures of fine meal would have produced a significant amount of food, indicating the generosity of Abraham's hospitality. Verse 7. And Abraham ran unto the herd, and fetched a calf tender and good, and gave it unto a young man, and he hasted to dress it. Abraham provides a choice cut of meat for his guests, indicating the lavishness of his hospitality. This verse also shows that Abraham had servants and young men to assist him in the preparation of the meal. Verse 8. And he took butter and milk, and the calf which he had dressed, and set it before them, and he stood by them under the tree, and they did eat. Abraham serves the meal to his guests and stands by them, demonstrating his attentiveness and concern for their needs. The use of dairy products such as butter and milk in the meal is significant, as they were considered symbols of abundance and prosperity in ancient times. The act of sharing a meal is also an important cultural and social practice, as it fosters a sense of community and unity. Verse 9. And they said unto him, Where is Sarah thy wife? And he said, Behold, in the tent. The visitors inquire about Sarah, Abraham's wife, indicating that they have some knowledge of her. This is the first indication that one of the visitors is actually God, as he is able to know things that are not explicitly communicated to him. Verse 10. And he said, I will certainly return unto thee according to the time of life, and lo, Sarah thy wife shall have a son. And Sarah heard it in the tent door, which was behind him. God reveals to Abraham that he will have a son, even though he and Sarah are advanced in years and Sarah is barren. This announcement is significant not just for Abraham and Sarah but for the entire lineage of Israel. The fact that Sarah is eavesdropping on the conversation emphasizes the significance of this event. Verse 11. Now Abraham and Sarah were old and well stricken in age, and it ceased to be with Sarah after the manner of women. This verse provides further context for the announcement of Sarah's impending pregnancy, emphasizing the physical improbability of it. It also underscores the miraculous nature of the event, as it is not just unlikely but seemingly impossible. Verse 12. Therefore Sarah laughed within herself, saying, After I am waxed old shall I have pleasure, my Lord being old also? Sarah's reaction to the news is one of disbelief and skepticism. Her laughter is not joyful but rather cynical and dismissive. Her reference to Abraham as my Lord reflects the patriarchal social structure of the time, where women were subservient to men. Verse 13. And the Lord said unto Abraham, Wherefore did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I of a surety bear a child, which am old? God is aware of Sarah's reaction and addresses it directly. This is another indication that one of the visitors is actually God himself. The fact that God knows Sarah's thoughts and emotions demonstrates his omniscience and his ability to see into the hearts of men and women. Verse 14. Is anything too hard for the Lord? At the time appointed I will return unto thee, according to the time of life, and Sarah shall have a son. God reiterates his promise to Abraham, emphasizing that nothing is too hard for him. The phrase, at the time appointed, implies that God has a specific plan and purpose for the events that are unfolding. The fact that God repeats the promise is an indication of his faithfulness and his desire to reassure Abraham and Sarah. Verse 15. Then Sarah denied, saying, I laughed not, for she was afraid. And he said, Nay, but thou didst laugh. Sarah denies laughing, but God knows the truth and confronts her with it. Sarah's fear of God is evident in her attempt to conceal the truth. This verse shows the human tendency to deny and cover up our shortcomings and weaknesses, even in the presence of the divine. Verse 16. And the men rose up from thence, and looked toward Sodom, and Abraham went with them to bring them on the way. The visitors prepare to leave and Abraham accompanies them, showing his hospitality and respect. The mentioned verse 17. And the Lord said, Shall I hide from Abraham that thing which I do? God reveals his plan to Abraham, demonstrating his trust in him and his role as a faithful servant. This verse shows God's desire for transparency and honesty with his chosen people. Verse 18. Seeing that Abraham shall surely become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be blessed in him. God reminds Abraham of the covenant he made with him, and the promise that his descendants will become a great nation. The reference to blessing all the nations of the earth emphasizes the universal significance of the events that are unfolding. Verse 19. For I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord, to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he hath spoken of him. God affirms his trust in Abraham's character and faithfulness, highlighting his role as a leader and teacher of his household and his community. This verse emphasizes the importance of passing on the traditions and values of faith to future generations. Verse 20. And the Lord said, Because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, and because their sin is very grievous. God reveals the reason for his impending judgment on the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, due to their sin and immorality. This verse shows God's concern for justice and his willingness to punish wickedness. Verse 21. I will go down now, and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it, which is come unto me, and if not I will know. God announces his intention to investigate the situation in Sodom and Gomorrah personally, demonstrating his thoroughness and fairness. The phrase, if not I will know, emphasizes his omniscience and his ability to discern the truth. Verse 22. And the men turned their faces from thence, and went toward Sodom, but Abraham stood yet before the Lord. The visitors leave to go to Sodom, but Abraham remains in the presence of God. This verse shows Abraham's closeness with God and his desire to intercede on behalf of the righteous in Sodom. Verse 23. And Abraham drew near and said, Wilt thou also destroy the righteous with the wicked? Abraham pleads with God to spare the righteous in Sodom, demonstrating his compassion and concern for others. This verse shows the power of intercession and the importance of standing up for what is right. Verse 24. Peradventure there be 50 righteous within the city, wilt thou also destroy and not spare the place for the 50 righteous that are therein? Abraham continues to negotiate with God, asking him to spare the city if there are at least 50 righteous people living there. This verse shows the depth of Abraham's concern and his willingness to boldly approach God on behalf of others. Verse 25. That be far from thee to do after this manner, to slay the righteous with the wicked, and that the righteous should be as the wicked, that be far from thee. Shall not the judge of all the earth do right? Abraham appeals to God's sense of justice and righteousness, emphasizing the importance of treating the righteous and the wicked differently. This verse shows Abraham's understanding of God's nature and his commitment to fairness and impartiality. Verse 26. And the Lord said, If I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then I will spare all the place for their sakes. God agrees to spare the city if there are 50 righteous people living there, demonstrating his mercy and his willingness to respond to the prayers of his. Verse 27. And Abraham answered and said, Behold now, I have taken upon me to speak unto the Lord, which am but dust and ashes. Abraham acknowledges his humble position before God and recognizes the privilege of being able to speak with him directly. This verse emphasizes the importance of humility and respect in our relationship with God. Verse 28. Peradventure there shall lack 5 of the 50 righteous. Wilt thou destroy all the city for lack of 5? And he said, If I find there 40 and 5, I will not destroy it. Abraham continues to plead for the city of Sodom, asking God to spare it even if there are only 45 righteous people living there. This verse shows Abraham's persistence and his willingness to keep negotiating on behalf of others. Verse 29. And he spake unto him yet again, and said, Peradventure there shall be 40 found there. And he said, I will not do it for 40's sake. God agrees to spare the city if there are 40 righteous people living there, demonstrating his mercy and his willingness to respond to the prayers of his faithful servants. Verse 30. And he said unto him, O let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak, peradventure there shall 30 be found there. And he said, I will not do it, if I find 30 there. Abraham continues to negotiate with God, asking him to spare the city if there are only 30 righteous people living there. This verse shows Abraham's faith and his persistence in prayer. Verse 31. And he said, Behold now, I have taken upon me to speak unto the Lord, peradventure there shall be 20 found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for 20's sake. Abraham persists in his intercession for Sodom, asking God to spare it if there are 20 righteous people living there. This verse shows the power of prayer and the importance of faith in our relationship with God. Verse 32. And he said, O let not the Lord be angry, and I will speak yet but this once, peradventure 10 shall be found there. And he said, I will not destroy it for 10's sake. Abraham continues to negotiate with God, asking him to spare the city if there are at least 10 righteous people living there. This verse shows Abraham's persistence and his willingness to boldly approach God on behalf of others. Verse 33. And the Lord went his way, as soon as he had left communing with Abraham, and Abraham returned unto his place. The conversation between God and Abraham ends, and God departs to continue his investigation of Sodom. Abraham returns to his place, having demonstrated his faith and his commitment to intercession on behalf of others. This verse shows the importance of persistence in prayer and the power of our relationship with God. Overall, Genesis 18 teaches us about the importance of faith, humility, and intercession. It also emphasizes God's desire for transparency and honesty with his chosen people, as well as his commitment to justice and fairness. We can learn from Abraham's example of persistence in prayer and his willingness to stand up for what is right. The story also reminds us of the importance of passing on our traditions and values of faith to future generations, and the significance of our relationship with God in our daily lives. Thank you for watching. Please share with us your favorite Bible verse below in the comments section. Don't forget to like and subscribe, it really does help our channel grow. Looking forward to see you back here for our next video. Always take good care.